Okay. Welcome to this webinar. It's called the Top 15 Marketing and Sales Tricks that Law Firms Use to Get You to Work There or for them. This particular webinar is interesting because what it does is it highlights the reasons that people choose law firms. And in highlighting this, I'm going to go into a little bit about why some of these reasons may be a mistake, and also how law firms tend to position themselves to be unique and different from other law firms. And really, in reality, when you talk to firms, they're all very similar in terms of the things they say. As you listen to these reasons, it's important that you're able to make sure that you can really absorb these reasons, because you're probably going to make a decision to work in a law firm based on these reasons. So this is a live webinar. So what'll happen, we'll do the webinar, and then after the webinar, we'll take a short break of no more than 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll come back and ask questions. This is a pretty big topic. I will not take a ton of questions today. I do have a little bit of a time commitment, but I will try to, when you ask questions, I'll try to get to most of them first, the earlier questions. And then if there are later questions that I'm unable to get to, I will swing back, and I should be able to address those next week if we don't get to anything. But again, this is a very important webinar because it's going to show you the different types of career decisions you may make and why a lot of those career decisions in terms of the firms you join may actually be wrong. The best marketing piece I personally can remember overseeing was from a law firm, was written by Quinn Emanuel. I believe it was in 1996 or maybe 1997, or maybe a little bit after that. But it had about 40 attorneys, and it was written on cotton stationery, like very expensive crane stationery. And it looked like it had been bound at Kinko's. And Kinko's are these stores that used to be all over the country on every block. And they did help people make photocopies and that sort of thing. And then this little promotional piece that was always handed out at law schools and mailed to different recruits. And this law firm was interested in growing. And so it put together this document. And once it did, it set it out on this kind of massive growth path that's still going on today. And it highlighted such aspects as most of the firm's attorneys were on law review and top law schools. And then it had several students from places like Harvard Law School had been at the very top of the graduating class, that most of the attorneys had gone to Ivy League schools and done law schools and done very well. There was women partners, and there was a diversity of people of color at the firm, and there was no dress code, and it was easy to make partner quickly. One person just did in 3.5 years. That the firm represented the largest and most influential clients in the country. And most of its partners had come from firms like Cravath and other top law firms. All the young attorneys in the firm were able to go to court and do trials. They had a saying there called "try lawyers, not litigators." Lawyers were casual. There was no hierarchy with each other. There was no hierarchy. Lawyers had the opportunity to work directly with clients as soon as they started and didn't have to wait years to do so. The law firm was very cohesive. They did retreats together, and everyone got together for drinks on Fridays. You could make a lot of money at the firm, just as much as in major firms. The law firm was called on to handle the biggest company cases. The law firm had so much work, you didn't need to bring in clients to make partner or advance. And believe it or not, at the time, all of this was true. But the law firm had done an incredibly effective job of positioning itself, say, as something that was ready to grow. It appealed to the types of attorneys it wanted, people who were very smart, but didn't necessarily want to go to the largest law firms. And after the firm grew, it started up saying other things about itself. So it said one wanted to work and establish or international boutique, for example. And it started calling itself the largest pure litigation firm. And this tactic worked as well and was all true. And so what law firms do is, like Quinn, it was exceptional at what it was doing, but they market their firms by to top attorneys or not top attorneys. It doesn't really matter, but they say things to get attorneys to want to work there. And if the law firm is going to make money and grow, it has to get people to work for it, and it has to get them to work there enthusiastically. And if you think about it, there's no huge differences in the way that law firms are in terms of the way they work. You're expected to sit down at a desk, bill hours, hopefully not get in trouble or make trouble, complain as little as possible, and then in return, you're going to get paid money. And And so law firms, it's important to them in order to attract people, they need to get people to do the work. It's the absolute most important thing. If they don't have people to do the work, then they're out of business. And so they need people to do the work. They need to present themselves as the very best option for the types of attorneys they want to hire. And there's all sorts of ways, like the example I just gave you of Quinn, of the things that law firms do to appeal to attorneys and get them to work for them. They need to look different than the competition, or they need to look like the best option among thousands of firms out there in the legal market. But in reality, attorneys decide where to work for not a ton of reasons. And law firms need to figure out, what the type of marketing pitch is to get the types of attorneys they want to hire to work there. So I've been in this business for a long time, more than 20 years. And I get all sorts of reasons from attorneys for sometimes declining the interviews or going to other interviews, taking offers and not applying to offers, applying to certain law firms and other law firms. And so what I'm going to talk a little bit about today are the things that law firms do to get attorneys to work there. What is the marketing that they're following that make people want to go to work there? So the first thing that's honestly, especially for young attorneys, and it's unfortunate that this is the case, but one of the most important things that law firms do in order to get people to work there is the money that they pay. So the money that the law firm pays is often going to determine whether or not the attorney goes to work there. It's one of the most critical factors in any attorney's decision about where to go to, whether or not to join a firm. Because if the pay's right, many attorneys are going to they'll just completely ignore other factors to accept a job there. And it's crazy how important people think that is. The idea that a law firm can pay you a lot of money and you can be expected to work crazy amounts of hours and give up your life essentially is interesting. Like, people choose that path instead of something else. When I was practicing law a few decades ago, there was the law firms in Los Angeles, including the largest and most prestigious firm, were paying $85,000 a year to third-year associates. And there was only a couple firms, Dewey, Ballantine, and Skadden Arps, that were on this New York scale at the time that was $155,000 a year. So I was working at Quinn, was very much enjoying myself, felt like I was doing well. But unfortunately, the salary differential between what I was offered at Dewey and Quinn was too much to pass up. The cultures were so much different. And Dewey was very formal and hierarchical, which just but his world. And Quinn was very open and fun and had a lot of work. And Dewey didn't have much. And when I arrived at this Dewey firm that was paying so much, I didn't have anything to do. I just sat there for the first 3 weeks because the firm didn't have any work. And so it was a huge mistake going there. And it would have continued to worsen with partner defections, botched mergers, partners getting laid and let go, and all this sort of stuff. And it was not a pleasant place to work. I chose it because of money. And this was just a massive mistake. At the time, the firm was making all this profit in New York, essentially, and doing very well with old kind of institutional corporate clients. And it was subsidizing this Los Angeles office as if it had all this money coming in, and it didn't really need it wasn't important to them how much money they were throwing off at the firm's Los Angeles office. It just didn't matter to them. So the idea is that sometimes money is not necessarily the best thing. Just give me 1 second. I want to check something. Okay, it's good. So just give me 1 second. Okay. The money that the firm was throwing off was something that would convince me potentially to work there. And so attorneys like myself can make decisions about leaving good firms and joining bad firms because they want to make money, or joining bad firms out of law school instead of good places where they want to make money. And I've seen so many careers ruined by this decision. I can't tell you how many people that I've encountered over my career that get two offers, one from a firm where they're very comfortable, like the people, another from a firm where the money is not, but the money might be not as good, but they like the people that I'm better. And it's very interesting. Partners, associates, and everyone are concerned. The associates are concerned of how the class level, they're paid at each class level, whether or not how the salary is calculated, if it's based on hours and performance. how law firms are compensating attorneys for the business they bring in, whether or not things such as committees, pro bono, or business development are counted towards the hours billed. What does a salary mean and equate to in different markets? So for cost of living purposes, a salary in New York needs to be probably twice of what it would be in Chicago. And a lot of times attorneys don't understand that, and maybe even more. Austin, Texas, by the way, has become extremely expensive compared to what it was. Take San Antonio, Texas, or something along that end. And then you also need to ask, do law firms, people are asking whether or not law firms are paying year-end bonuses. That's also very important to people. Like throughout the year, they're comparing notes based on that. What does the law firm do to pay year-end bonuses? And then whether or not the law firms often offer bonuses for attorneys that they come out of clerkship, different types of factors that determine bonuses. And these are just some of the reasons, but sometimes if a law firm the attorney chooses to go to a law firm based on money considerations, they'll say things like, the law firm made me the best offer, I can make more money there, they pay much more than I'm making now, I couldn't resist this great opportunity from the offer and amount I'm getting paid. And then people will give reasons for not choosing, that they don't pay enough, they have student loans and they make more money, the law firm doesn't pay big bonuses. And then if the law firm pays a lot and offers large bonuses, every attorney in the market, it's not even something they really need to talk about. It's just something that every attorney in the market immediately understands and learns about. And the law firm doesn't even really need to say much about it. People start going there as word gets out. People want to apply there like parched animals on the water hole in the middle of the desert. When I got a job at this Dewey firm, all my friends at Quinn started sending me their resumes because they wanted to make more. And all a law firm needs to do is spend a lot of money and make it evident how much they're paying, and offer letters, and the word will quickly get around about the law firm's generosity and how much they pay. So in the case where a law firm doesn't pay a lot, it will often do and say numerous things to convince you that money shouldn't govern how you think about these things. So they'll say, we don't pay as much, but everyone here can make partner. They'll say, we're a lifestyle firm, and that's very common. They'll say they pay a lower salary because they don't have a buy-in to their partnership. They don't pay as much, but there's more employment security. Salary and bonuses are merit-based, so you can make more bigger firms if you work harder, more interesting work. You get the idea. And just experience will sell. They'll sell client contact. They'll sell that they don't lay people off and the market slows down. So all these things law firms will try to do to sell you of not paying as much money. So there's all these sort of sales methods that law firms use to try to get people to work there. When they pay money, that's a method. And when they don't pay a lot of money, that's a method that they use as well. It's very interesting that I just want to observe before we go on that a lot of times when people take jobs in firms based on money, that's really all you get. You're almost front loading your career by paying money, or by early in your career, not getting paid a lot of money with the chance you're not going to have a lot of opportunity later, that you might not have interesting work, that you might have to bill a lot of hours, and just a lot of things that go into it can negatively influence you when you join a large law firm based on nothing but the money that they're paid. So another thing that is important when people join firms is the reputation of the firm. That's often going to determine whether attorneys go to work there. So money is very important, but also the reputation. Attorneys are very aware of the reputation of law firms. There's all sorts of rankings. BCG has rankings. There are plenty of magazines and online publications that have rankings. There's people that review firms, and a law firm's reputation is typically probably the second most important aspect after money that attorneys are going to consider before accepting an offer. So attorneys will base their understanding of reputation based on peers, what law firm opinion sites, where students with the best grades go, how much the law firm actually pays, the sorts of clients the firm represents, like whether they're large or smaller clients, whether or not the firm is considered a difficult place to work, what people are saying about it, how well what the education achievements of the attorneys look like. So someone with really good educational accomplishments is always going to want to go to a firm where there's other people with very good educational accomplishments. accomplishments, the age of the firm, like how old is the firm? That's going to have a lot to do with everything. If the name is familiar, like you can say the name of the firm and people will know who it is, how large the firm is, things like whether or not there's Supreme Court clerks or that choose that as a place to work, the amount of money partners make in the firm, the law firm's reputation in a practice area. People don't like scandals when those affect the firm, but every firm at some point gets involved in scandals. Whether or not the firm has a reputation for laying off associates. There have been a lot of large law firms that are very well known that have had their brands permanently altered by the fact that they have laid people off. So that's can be very serious. Sometimes if very famous people worked at the firm, that's something that people like. Our rankings, Vault rankings, BC Chambers rankings, U.S. News rankings, local rankings from bar associations and so forth. Whatever the law firm says about itself in promotional brochures, how others will perceive you if you take a job at the law firm, meaning what will your peers say? How will people think about you if you go there? And so a lot of these reasons that you may choose to go someplace or not choose someplace is based on reputation, the law firm's reputation in the market. If you get most attorneys, if they get in their market, if they get an offer from a law firm with the very best reputation, they will often accept it. And I've seen attorneys literally that have been practicing for 30 years and they get positions with some of the best law firms or try to. You can call them up and tell them about a very prestigious law firm interested in them. And they will say, yes, I would like to go to work place. It's just the reputation of a law firm reflects on, for the attorneys, how they feel about themselves and their worth in the market. And a lot of times lawyers believe that if they're going to a law firm with a better ranking or reputation, it means that they're going to get better work, which is often the case. Ultimately, they may also get more money. They may have the ability to easily move laterally later on to another law firm or in-house or the government. They'll get better training and then their resume will look better over the long term if they work there. And legal community will give them more prestige and respect, and they'll be able to become a better lawyer because they were associated with good people. And honestly, that is true. If you work with better people early in your career, you're often going to become a much better lawyer. And if you can have more long-term potential, meaning if you get a position with the best firm possible, you can over time actually potentially become a much better lawyer. And then you can make more money as a partner and attract larger clients. But I think one of the most important things to understand is that every law firm is what I would call a tribe, and attorneys all want to be in the best tribe they can be associated with. And it's just very simple. So most attorneys will always consider leaving jobs if they get a position with a better reputation. But these tribes, what's interesting about them is not everybody fits into a tribe. So if you don't fit into a certain type of tribe, that's problematical. And then, if if an attorney doesn't choose a given law firm based on its reputation, they may not say it's due to the reputation. Instead, they may find trivial reasons to say they're not interested. Most can include things like I heard some bad things, or I didn't think working there would help my resume, or I'm nervous about how it would look if I went to work there and wanted to work somewhere else, meaning they don't believe that firm can help them get a new firm. And then law firms can also use their reputation to get people to work there that normally wouldn't. Law attorneys are aware of a law firm's reputation before they interview there. And then to the extent people are not, the law firm will say things along the lines of the city, the attorneys that the firm is the best city or best firm in the city for a certain type of work. They may talk about the individual accomplishments of attorneys that work there. They may talk about attorneys who had the opportunity to go to more prestigious firms, but chose them. They may talk about clients that chose their firm over more prestigious firms, tell the attorney that it's very difficult to get offers there, and that people are special and very few people get offers. We'll talk about how the firm is growing. If the law firm is old and established, they'll talk about that. If the law firm is having reputational issues and other issues and make statements, a lot of firms do, like people will not want to go to work there for those reasons. But it'll say the people we did not want are the ones that left. Now the firm is stronger. No one here was involved in the scandal and our clients are sticking with us. The worst is behind us. We're getting stronger, younger leadership. And The best people are still here. We have a lot of room for growth. We have a new business model. It's going to do very well, and all these sorts of things. So people choose law firms for lots of reputational reasons. Law firms have poor reputations at some points in time, and then at other points in time, they may have a better reputation. But that attorneys will choose law firms based on reputation. And so law firms can use their reputation to get you to work there. What's scary, though, is just because a law firm may have a good reputation doesn't mean you're going to fit in with those people. So sometimes choosing a firm based on a reputation over choosing people and the quality of work and other things can be very risky. And it's honestly not the best idea for a lot of people. So the other thing that law firms do, almost all law firms, is they talk about their culture to get people to work there. And I think this one, by the way, is very funny. So we talked about money. Money, of course, is something that motivates a lot of people. I don't think it's the smartest thing to do, money, just because it doesn't mean that you're going to spend the rest of your career at a firm. It may just be something that's short-term in nature, but because law firms that pay a lot of money typically it's much harder to advance. Law firms will use their reputation in the legal market that may be built over 100 years to get people to go work there. So that's another thing. And then law firms will use their culture to get people to work there as well. And culture, like I said, I haven't said this, but is one of the funniest ones that I think there are, is because all law firms have been using culture for forever. And they always talk about how great their culture is, and they almost always say the same things. And I was talking to a firm this week, similar conversations. I've just so many law firms over the years, and it's just the exact same thing that they were saying about their culture that everyone else says. But in general, when you do think about culture, there are law firms that have certain types of cultures, and there are certain people that a law firm is going to be comfortable with instead of others. And if you're spending more time at work than your families, with your family, which is true for a lot of attorneys, then the culture of the people that you're going to be working with in your firm is obviously very important. And culture is things like, is it more important to the firm, for people in the firm to make money? Is that what's most important? And sometimes if they believe that's important, then the law firm will tell you about how much money people make. That's their culture. If a law firm believes that they're very honest and they do the right thing and so forth, they take the high road, they'll talk about that as their culture. And if a law firm thinks you value work-life balance over how much money you make, they'll talk about that. And if a law firm thinks that doing the best work that can be done is the most important thing, they'll talk about that. So for every possible cultural attribute, the law firm is going to have some method of interesting you in them. And we'll talk about how the attorneys interact, or the behaviors of the people in the law firm. The attorneys the law firm presents as role models, the degree of hierarchy in the office. They'll say things like, there's no hierarchy, they'll talk about things like that. We'll talk about the way that the attorneys and staff there address one another, the type of work people aspire to do. People grew up in different types of families. They'll talk about that in socioeconomic backgrounds, so how they treat their staff, how attorneys like to exercise together and those sorts of things, how the law firm hires the people that work there, open door policies, closed door policies, how people think of the firm. They talk about dress codes, where people are from. Sometimes they'll even talk about people liking to go out to bars and drink together. They'll talk about political parties. Sometimes if everyone's in one political party, Trump primarily, they'll talk about often how they think of clients. That's a big thing, whether or not clients are thought of in a positive or negative way. Pro bono work, how different types of non-attorney staff are treated, the type of people that would have been in sororities or fraternities, vacations people take, the way people of different sexes and different backgrounds, sexual orientations and so forth interact. Sometimes we'll talk about religion. It may be obvious sometimes, but we'll talk about that. How people at the firm, you can dress codes, getting along outside of work, how people spend their free time, business development, how important or unimportant it is, how intellectual the attorneys are or how non-intellectual they are, the type of jobs that people go to work in after working there, how competitive people are, whether or not the firm has athletes or former athletes, schools that they went to, married, non-married, divorced, all these things about whether or not the attorneys are those. They'll even talk about music, it's just decorating offices, summer program or lateral hiring growth, how neat desks are. There's just so much I could list. I don't even want to keep going through this, but they'll talk about neighborhoods people live in. I've heard that. They'll talk about families, even cars people drive, how loud the firm sees, the types of clients, happy the attorneys are, the part of the country where the firm is headquartered. And so for law firms doing all these things properly, then attorneys will say culture is the reason for choosing the firm. And this is a very common thing. It actually, I would say that in most cases, money is the most important. And then after that, reputation is most important. I think that those probably shouldn't be the most important. I think often culture is most important. And because this is going to determine whether or not you're likely to stay in the firm, whether or not the firm is likely to be a place where you're going to want to be over the long term, as opposed to something where you may just want, where you're not going to be happy. Because if you're not happy in a certain type of culture, because that firm is made up of certain types of individuals, then that's not good. That puts you in a situation where you may not be happy. And if the culture is right, then you could go much further because you're around people that are like you, that you identify with, you're happy at work, you're spending your time at the firm is much preferable to what it would be like if you're in the wrong culture. Just think about if you're an athlete and then, you want to join some club that, for the sewing club or something, you're not going to be happy if you're a big football player in the sewing club. And it's the same thing with law firms. If you join the firm with the wrong culture, you're not going to be happy. And for people like culture, they find things that are similar, like being able to like the people there and feeling more comfortable, and people driving similar cars, even people from different parts of the country, and sports people play, just religion. And if someone's culture doesn't make someone feel important, then they're less likely to be happy and things are less likely to work out. Okay. But people don't like the culture. They'll say that people are weird. They're not comfortable. Attorneys don't seem happy. Everyone works all the time. People didn't go to the best schools. And it's all about how you understand and think about a culture. And law firms will often market their culture if they think you're a certain type of individual, which they can usually pick up from by looking at your resume. They will introduce you to people that are similar to you when you're interviewing with them to make you feel like you're going to get along there. They'll introduce you to attorneys that may have gone to your school. They'll introduce you to attorneys that may share your religious background, who look like you, and who they think you'll be comfortable with. And also, if they sense that certain things may be important to you, they'll emphasize these to get you excited about working there. This is just a funny story. I walked into an office of a firm once, and an attorney I was speaking with in the firm pulled out and started chewing tobacco in front of me in an interview. And I couldn't imagine that this was happening, but I loved it. I thought it was so cool. I thought that what kind of firm would someone that is such a good attorney as him, what kind of firm would someone just start chewing tobacco in front of me? And I realized he wouldn't have done this had he sensed I would have been offended by this. And it was a smart move. I was just amazed. And it made me immediately comfortable. And for a lot of reasons, because I grew up chewing tobacco when I was young. And when I saw that immediately, that completely sold me on the firm. And I did everything I could to try to get a position there. And I did. This was not Dewey Bell, Quinn Emanuel. Very smart move joining that firm when I saw that. So the culture is one thing, but other things that law firms do to market themselves are they make the firm seem very exciting. They emphasize the morale of the firm and then they make that kind of an overriding theme. Sometimes the firm may be expanding and doing everything right. And other seasons it may not be doing things right and not have enough work to go around. And so it's important to realize that law firms will go through ups and downs. And at some point, law firms can become like the it place to work after there's been major successes in the media, like a large case or transaction, something in the media, someone very well known may join the firm like a star attorney. that makes them look attractive. Other times the law firm could be growing very quickly and get on people's radar due to this growth. And then sometimes there's maybe something that is unusually attractive about the firm's business model, and that also gets people excited. I've walked into some firms before where I see the people and they appear genuinely angry and upset. And you're wondering like, what's going on there? And then other law firms, you may walk in there and the people seem very happy and excited. Firms will choose a firm often based on the morale and the received morale. They'll say people seem excited about working there. They hear that it's a great place to work from other people. They'll say the firm feels different and like a great place to work. They'll say people seem happy. They'll say there's a lot of energy. They'll say everybody gets together outside of work and spends time. They'll say the law firm takes fun retreats, and people in the firm are young, that the firm is growing, that no one is leaving the firm, that the firm has a plan and everyone's excited about the plan and behind it. They'll say things like that about the morale. And then sometimes they'll just say people don't seem happy. It's not exciting, low energy. Siloed is a very common one. And what siloed means is that the partners will hoard all their work, and they may have one or two associates, but they won't share anything. And that's very common for a lot of law firms, especially it's always been common, but it's very common now with virtual law firms, where partners will pretty much do most of the work themselves and then share the revenue with the firm, the centralized firm, I guess is the way to put it. Some law firms people will say there's a lot of turnover, feels aimless, difficult to make partner, nothing unique about the firm. And so all of this is important because it's how law firms market themselves, and they can project themselves in different ways to appear exciting or not exciting. And to get people excited about working there, a lot of them will talk about how young everyone is. Some will talk about the energy. Some will talk about low attrition and the fact that people rarely leave. Some will talk about how people work as a team, that people stay there for the people, that the people do a lot of trips and fun activities together. And so these are all things that law firms are using to market to people. And I actually believe that if you join a place that seems high energy as opposed to low energy, it's going to rub off on you. If you look at some firms, they just appear so ossified and people may seem quiet and not overly interested in working there. And these, in my opinion, are firms that you should avoid unless that's what you want to be around. If you join a firm that seems exciting, where the people seem exciting, it's actually much more fun. It can be much more meaningful for you in the long run when you're able to join places like that. So another big one, especially over the past several years, has been law firms and their commitments to diversity. And it's very significant for diversity. And diversity is a very significant reason that people will join firms. There's firms, frankly, that don't have any real diversity. If you're a diverse attorney, you won't feel comfortable working there. There's the ability of the firm is not diverse. Often it can hurt their ability to attract clients. Clients will often demand diversity from law firms. And so it's very difficult if a firm's not diverse sometimes to generate business. It's very important. I mean, you see law firms having diversity statements right at the top of their websites. Often it's the first thing you see when you log into their websites. They'll have log sections about diversity. Diversity is measured by attorneys by the number of people, different races, religions, and sexual orientations, and how tolerant the law firm seems of different viewpoints and different types of people. Some law firms are very interested in diverse statements and things, and others are not. And some staffs in law firms are diverse, others are not. Some firms are open to people from different political parties, others are not. The people with different economic, educational, other backgrounds have a lot to do with diversity, because people can come out of, even if it's a different race, or people come out of different background, there's religion, people are comfortable, different viewpoints, and often firms will have a lack of tolerance for people, different types of people who seem like they have done something against a diverse work environment. There's online rankings about diversity. There's outward statements about diversity. And so diversity can be very important. And I think one of the things that's interesting this day and age is the diversity of whether or not people are coming from different political environments. So certain political environments will make people more or less likely to feel comfortable being diverse. So what does that mean? So sometimes there's law firms that are very Democratic. There's law firms that are very Republican. And if you watch people on both sides of the fence, like some people are very open to political different viewpoints and other people aren't. It's almost as if there's a war going on between people of different backgrounds, different political backgrounds. So you watch CNN, it's different than Fox. And so all this can be positive. So people will talk about mentorship programs, the number of people from different races, where they feel comfortable, the diversity of clients, how committed the law firm seems to diversity, being diverse, whether or not the law firm is afraid or not to hire people of different viewpoints, diversity of the people that are in executive roles. And then if someone isn't choosing a law firm due to diversity, they'll say things like it's not a suitable environment, everyone's white and male, sometimes I've heard white toast or milk bread, I don't know, but the law firm doesn't care about diversity. Diverse attorneys are leaving, diverse people don't do well. They were recently sued for some sort of diversity issue, people being uncomfortable there if they're diverse. And it's vital that a law firm is able to market itself as being diverse. If they can't do that, they can create a lot of problems for the firm. So most law firms do what they can to promote diversity. They do so at diversity fairs. They have diversity sections that are right on the homepage of their websites. Many have diversity directors. Their marketing materials will always highlight their diversity. And they often will have diversity training, and they will introduce diverse attorneys to other diverse attorneys in interviews. And they'll always talk about their commitment to diversity and use diversity to promote themselves. And it's important that a lot of firms around the country, depending on the geographic location of the firm, simply aren't diverse. It's pretty obvious, but joining a law firm that doesn't have diversity is often a good move, because the law firm will want you to stay, and you certainly will be held to the same work standards. But often when there's not a lot of diversity in the firm, it just doesn't look good for the firm, and especially to have people at a leadership level when there's no diversity there as well. This is a big one that law firms use to try to get you to join. Again, the most common things that people join are money, and then also the reputation. Diversity is more important to some than others. Culture, in my opinion, should be the most important. But one of the things that the law firms will use is advancement potential of attorneys working there to market themselves. And personally, I believe that this is one of the most important, because most of the largest law firms, unless you're able to bring in business or work extreme hours and then eventually hopefully bring in business, you're never going to have any employment security or the ability to advance. So I guess you have to ask yourself, does it make a lot of sense for me to join a law firm where I'm never going to have the ability, or where my odds of advancing are very slim? There are lots of law firms that make partners out of maybe 1 in 100 or less people that end up joining the law firm when they're, for example, first years. And so it could be very hard to advance certain places. And attorneys that join law firms are focused on getting ahead. Many don't take this seriously when they're younger. Many take it more seriously, but when older and they're more experienced. But attorneys will judge advancement potential, and the advancement potential they have is based on how hard or difficult it is to make partner. And this is important. I mean, if the law firm has access to lots of work and it can be easy to make partner, then that's an important thing. People will often join firms based on how easy it is to advance and increase their compensation. Often people will join firms based on whether or not they can get more responsibility in their practice area, more or less responsibility, whether the partners have been hired laterally or not. So some law firms won't make a lot of partners out of their associates. If they want people at a partner level, they'll just hire them laterally. Other law firms, sometimes attorneys will need to leave once they reach a certain level of seniority. That's obviously something that happens. So what does advancement look like? Does compensation increase a lot as you get more senior? And then law firms will often not choose firms based on the advancement potential. Will choose firms where they'll say it's easy to make partner there. They don't let people go. They allow people to continue working there that don't make partner. And they'll say, it's a smaller firm and I'll be able to advance more working there at this firm compared to working at a big firm. Or I will have a lot of opportunities to grow as an attorney. Or I can make partner there without getting business because the firm has so much work, or the firm's going to teach me how to bring in clients, or I'll have a budget, an unlimited budget for client development, or the partner I'll be working for is close to retirement and needs someone to take over the book of business, which is actually a very good thing to join firms for. And that is a major advancement thing a lot of attorneys don't realize. Sometimes it's younger leadership, and younger leadership is something you can be part of, or very important. And then lack of advancement is when people say things like, very difficult to make partner there. Everyone leaves after a few years. They don't need any more partners. They've never made a partner in this branch office. Everyone is asked to leave when they have about 8 years of experience, which is true in a lot of firms. And so law firms will often try to convince you to stay based on advancement potential. So if you don't believe there's a lot of a chance to advance, they'll say, if you stay, your odds of making partner are very good, but a lot of people leave before they have the opportunity. They'll say, our partners earn a lot of money and you can do very well here. They'll say, if you do good work, you'll be made partner. They'll say, we'll make more partners than any other similar firm in this market. You can make partner here compared to a larger firm. Sometimes this is what smaller law firms will say to get people to work there. We'll talk about how they're going to show you how to generate business, which is one I've heard a lot, which helps you advance. They'll say things like, we'll take you on our pitches to our clients, give you a client development budget. We have large institutional clients. You don't need to bring in a lot of work to become a partner. And so all these things about advancement potential they'll tell you about. And these are actually very important too, because you have to consider that some law firms, if you're joining them and there isn't this advancement potential, you're essentially joining a firm that frankly is a dead end job. Is that a good use of, is that a smart thing to do? Is it smart to join a law firm that may be a dead end job? And often, meaning you'll get a lot of compensation up front, you'll get a lot of experience, but the job itself may not actually lead anywhere. That can be an issue that you need to be very aware of when you're joining lots of different firms. This is a other important one, I believe, and it's that law firms will often market themselves based on having a lot of work to get attorneys to work there. And sometimes people don't look at this as a good thing, but it actually is a good thing because there's lots of reasons that you want to stay busy in a law firm. If a law firm is very busy, it means that they're doing something to bring in that business. It's also, if you're a young attorney, you're getting trained very early in your career with the law firm is training you based on having access to that work. So if you don't have access to work, you may not be getting a lot of training. If you're not getting a lot of training, you may be in a position where you don't become a good attorney because it typically takes about 5 years for an attorney to learn any practice area. So if you're not learning a practice area early in your career, that can be very dangerous as well because you're not getting exposed to enough work. Also, if you're not getting enough work early in your career and the firm doesn't have enough work, you're always at risk of losing your job. If the law firm is very busy, you're going to have employment stability. The law firm needs people to do the work. And with that employment stability, you're going to be able to feel you're not going to have to worry about losing your job. When people get very slow in their firms, they worry about losing their job, as they should, because the law firm maybe can't afford to pay them. But you have to understand, if you're at a busy firm, they're probably doing something right, and that's good. And that provides potentially more upward mobility than you might not see elsewhere. And busy law firms often have lots and lots of learning and training opportunities, and that sometimes they'll have opportunities to give you different types of work. These very busy law firms, you do not hear about layoffs in them. When a law firm's very busy, they're doing everything they possibly can to keep people there. They can give you lots of experience. They can introduce you to all sorts of different things. They'll often pay all sorts of bonuses to hold on to their attorneys and keep them working. They typically will have much better support staff, meaning the support staff they can afford to staff on matters is good because they're so busy. And so that gives them extra money to do that. They'll give bonuses when people make their hours, or bonuses sometimes for no reason at all. Yeah, you can make more money there as a partner because if the law firm's busy, then they're throwing off more money. The busier the law firm gets, the more it can often raise its hourly billable rates. These firms also typically pay the most. And so these are all very good reasons for joining a firm. Like people will often say, oh, it's slavery or it's working too hard in the firm by joining a firm with that's very busy. But you should always look at that as potentially a positive thing, especially as a young attorney when you have a lot of gas in the tank, because you're learning at a busy law firm how to stay busy and how to do work at a very high level. And you're getting trained, and you're maybe getting trained a lot. And there's often, when a law firm is very busy, a lot of opportunities. These are all very important things. Now, if a law firm, sometimes people will give reasons for not choosing law firms because they're busy. Attorneys typically don't choose these firms and run from them. They don't want to work in busy firms. And that's also understandable, because sometimes attorneys will say that these busy firms are sweatshops with inhuman working conditions. And honestly, that's sometimes true. There are firms that people are working till 10 o'clock and 7 days a week, and it's just crazy. And when those attorneys may only be needed to do the work, they may not be valued based on their ability to bring in work in the future. There may be few opportunities to make partner because the law firm has enough ongoing work that it doesn't need to advance people, because the work just keeps coming, and they can afford to just let people go and keep people going up the chain. Sometimes when the firm's very busy, partners and a lot of firms will work with one another to bring in different to work, and they'll bring in give work to each other. Then this, in a busy firm, this may not be as valued. These busy firms often will not have any value your personal life outside of work, and maybe it will often crush their spirit. It could negatively affect their health. The law firms will make them leave after they gain seniority. So a lot of large law firms have mandatory retirement at age 65. And law firms convince attorneys to go to these firms based on being very busy. So a busy law firm is going to say things like, it's easier for an attorney to make partner. There's always work to do. We're growing. You'll be able to make your bonus. All this work means you're going to get better experience early in your career, different types of work. You'll be able to make hours for your bonus and all these sorts of things. And honestly, a busy firm is very important. And it's something that a lot of attorneys don't necessarily understand early in their career. If you join a law firm that's not busy, you are often at risk of losing your job, and you often will. It's very common for law firms in Silicon Valley and New York and other major markets to slow down at various points in time. One of the largest slowdowns is often with corporate related work. So corporate work will slow down when the transactional work slows down, and lots of people will lose their jobs. There's other firms that always have ongoing work. So it's just very important for you to understand that you need to try to often find firms that have a lot of work, especially as a young attorney, because if you don't find those firms, then your position is at risk, advancement is at risk, also even staying employed is at risk. Another thing that law firms will do to market themselves is they'll talk about their expertise in a given practice area. Different law firms are ranked on their practice areas. Some law firms are very good for corporate. Some are very good for litigation. Some are very good for both. Some are very good for IP. Some have a good reputation in one practice area and not another. And sometimes law firms are considered the go-to firm in a given practice area. You have boutiques. The number of attorneys in a given practice area is often very important. The quality of attorneys in a practice area, the awards attorneys may have received from a firm, from different practice areas and different publications, and how the firm appears in different practice areas. So people will say things like, it's the only game in town, nothing but my practice area is strongest in my practice area. And then the law candidate doesn't join a firm because of their practice area. They'll say there's only a few attorneys there. Firm doesn't have a great reputation. And that this particular issue of why people join and don't join a firm due to their practice area is very interesting, because I see people all the time when I'm working with attorneys that may have 1 or 2 years or 5 or 10 years of experience, and they're finding themselves in these large law firms where there's only a few people in their practice area. And that could be, frankly, very dangerous. If we join a firm with only a few people in your practice area, that means that you may not be able to, that there's not going to be potentially a lot of advancement opportunity, or the training might not be good, or the exposure to the types of work may be limited by the type of work that one partner has, for example. So that can be very dangerous, since people won't choose firms because of the reputation of the practice area, because of a few people in the practice area, but because of the type of work the firm gets in the practice area. And sometimes the practice area will support other practice areas in the firm and not generate its own work. That's common, for example, in practice areas like tax, where tax work often is generated or comes from the corporate group. And this is something to think about. And so law firms will market themselves based on the strength of the practice area. They may do private equity work or public company work. They may work for the largest companies to do patents. They may give more trial experience to get all the best cases. They say they're the best place in a practice area. And so these are all important things. And again, this is something that's very important for you to understand when you're joining a firm, like how strong is my firm in this practice area? And the more and the better you understand that, the better situated you are going to be to do well in your career. If you're able to do well in a given practice area, meaning if you're able to get a lot of experience doing in that practice area. So it's important. Other things law firms will market. Another one is your mentorship, connection, and other sorts of things. So law people will often join a firm because they're able to work with someone who's well known. There's attorneys there who are going to mentor them. There's someone highly regarded that they get the opportunity to work with. That's always a big thing. They may be recruited by a senior attorney at the firm who recruits them and takes an interest in them. So this can be a very important thing if you have someone that's going to be looking out for you while you're there and taking an interest in you. If they believe that when they join, they're going to have people that protect them, that they know, or that are likely to take an interest in them, that they're going to feel welcome. There's people in power that will help them. This is very important. If you can join a firm where there's people there that are likely to support you, where you feel like people have your back, whereas sometimes you could join a firm where you're joining and you just have no support, where there's no one there that's going to help you or look out for you. That can be very scary. But a lot of people do. A lot of people join major firms and are hired there, but they join with no one that potentially is going to have their back. And that's very scary. And so you need to understand that joining a firm where there's people that support you is a big deal. If you have a connection someplace, then that's going to often determine how well you're going to be able to do in the firm. It's a big deal. If an attorney is trying to get into a job with someone or a firm that's able to make them feel supported, they'll say things like, I'm going to be able to get work for an attorney considered a major expert in my field, working with some friends that I know there, or partners that I know there, they'll have a back, people that will train them and in a practice area, that they will mentor them and make them a better attorney in that practice area. And then a lot of times people will not choose law firms because there is no mentorship at the firm, or they feel like not going to have anyone who's going to train them how to be successful. There's no one that would support them. They're just joining a firm with no one there that would support them. And these are very important points. If you're able to join a firm where there's people that support you, you're much better off than not. So you have people that are going to look out for you. If the firm has problems and they leave, they may take you with them. If you're running into problems, they may back you up. And these things are all very important. And sometimes if people don't want to be there, they will say that there's no one there, or I feel alone. And that's true. And law firms will often use mentors to get people to join there. And it's very important. If people believe that there's going to be someone there in their corner, they'll do things like have them interview with older attorneys, and those older attorneys might take them out to drinks or meal to bond with them, or recruit people the firm knows or has worked with in the past. They'll try to create a bond like that. They may have attorneys give other attorneys advice about other law firms they may be interviewing with during the interviews, or promote mentorship and related programs when those attorneys are interviewed. And the most common tactic is often the law firm will have you meet when you go in with that older attorney that you'd be working with, and then that older attorney will take you out to drinks or a meal. It can be a very effective strategy. Though during these same meetings, the older attorney will always ask questions about the younger attorney's hobbies, tell them something about themselves, and they get to know the person much better, and it will make the younger attorney feel like there's someone in the corner. It's used, by the way, both large and smaller firms, and it works very well. Most younger attorneys often feel like they need this connection to be comfortable and supported at a prospective firm, and it is very important. It's something that you need. So you should have somebody ideally in your corner, and this is a thing that law firms will do. You have to understand whether or not it's genuine or not. but feeling like you have someone who has your back is very important. And then sometimes it can be as simple as something like office location. I talk to law firms all the time, and I say people should come to work here because we have these nice new offices in this place, and that's something that they use for many attorneys. If you have to go into the office, that can be a very important thing. Where is the office located? How long will it take me to get there? And it's important in a market like Los Angeles. There could be a firm in the west side of Los Angeles or downtown, and people will choose whether or not to work there based on where they live, based on the office location. Sometimes there are firms that have offices in suburbs that people like. Build the office based on what part of the city it's in, where is an area where there's traffic, or is it close to public transportation or parking, and where there's a fun part of upcoming part of town, restaurants, all these things where you can live, how far it's from your house. And so people will choose firms literally based on this. And if a law firm has things to do near the office or public transportation is near there, then they'll choose it. And sometimes they won't choose the office location because they feel like they have to move. There's nothing near the office. And frankly, I believe that an office location is very important, because if you are able to work closer to the office of the firm and to live closer to the office, it's more time you get to do fun things or just spend time with your family, or you're not driving. And that's all very important. Law firms will use their office location all the time to get people to work there. I remember one law firm was part of their marketing DNA. They had an office overlooking the ocean. Hardly anybody had that. And there are a few major firms in Los Angeles. They have offices in Santa Monica. They're actually on the beach. I've seen attorneys, because of these firms, actually turn down offers at other firms because they wanted to be there. I used to work in Pasadena, which is part of Los Angeles. And I remember there were law firms there that paid less than those downtown. But rather than make traffic clogged commute downtown, attorneys preferred to work in these firms because there was no commute. And there's offices in different locations of Los Angeles that are very desirable. 6 is Beverly Hills and Century City. If you live on the west side of Los Angeles, and people would almost never work there because of that. There's some firms that are in Aspen, Colorado, and other places that appeal to skiers. I've seen a lot of people take jobs there. Montana, Idaho, these locations appeal to people. The office location of a firm can make a huge difference many times for whether or not someone will choose to work there. Benefits are often used, but many times these aren't the most important. But I once remember an attorney accepting an offer because they thought it was a great thing that this other law firm had free lunch during the week. I've seen partners take offers from firms that because they have larger business development budgets. Sometimes people I've seen take offers because they give them all sorts of reimbursement for laptops and at-home offices. I remember there was a law firm in Detroit when I was younger, very young, coming out of school, that gave people a down payment on homes. I thought that was cool. I remember there was a law firm in New York that offered associates messenger called Wachtell that would offer associates messengers to run errands, so they didn't have to leave their desk while they were at work, which was cool. Skadden Arts in Los Angeles used to have a shirt closet where you could get free shirts if you worked all night. I've seen people come to work in our company because of health insurance instead of an HMO, Blue Cross. I saw someone once go to a competitor because they were upset with the law firm that made their associates park across the street from the law firm's offices, while partners got covered parking or some office building. Law firms can give all sorts of benefits and perks like relocation expenses, 401k plans, health insurance, sick leave, parking reimbursement, vacation leave, domestic partners, leave benefits, sporting tickets. Sometimes some firms have condominiums, other things where people can stay. Some will have same-sex partner benefits. Most do these days. Health savings accounts, in-house CLE, business development expenses, firm retreats, maternity policies, gyms, on-site dry cleaning, free messengers, laptops, on-site childcare, which is very rare, but there are some firms I've heard of that have that. Life insurance, disability insurance, meals, car services, profit sharing, cafeterias, food reimbursement if you work late, bar association dues. And so law firms, people will often choose law firms based on these benefits. And many times these are some of the most important reasons that law firms will get, that most important reason people will give for joining these firms, and they'll be sold on these benefits. And this will be one of the most important reasons for them to choose firms. I've seen people choose firms almost entirely based on health insurance. That was very important for their family, or a gym where their fitness was important and they didn't want to have to leave the office to work out, and business development, unlimited budgets. And sometimes people won't choose firms based on that. And if it's important, sometimes I've seen people not want to go to work someplace because they didn't pay enough expenses for business development, or they have to go out of pocket for healthcare. And to get attorneys interested in working various places, sometimes the law firm will just list all its benefits. And then when people get offers, they'll come and ask about the benefits. And these can be a very big deal to a lot of attorneys. And so it's just something to think about, that this law firms also use benefits to market to people. And what you should be seeing by now, as we're going through all these things, is that law firms really are trying to sway you. They're doing all these things to get you interested in working there and to make you want to work there for your career. And so the more of these things you're able to understand, and to understand how a law firm is trying to get you to work there, the better off you are to make decisions about them and to understand these sort of marketing methods they're using too. And then this, of course, virtual work. I'm not going to talk too much about this because this is a very important topic right now for people. Sometimes people want to be able to work exclusively virtually. The number of days someone has to go into the office is very important. So this is a huge factor that people will make these days. Will make them decide whether or not they want to work someplace. FaceTime, being able to work from home, all these things can become huge issues in terms of making people choose whether or not to work someplace, and availability during the day. But people make this a huge issue. Parents do, being able to be home during the day for taking kids to school, picking kids up from school, but taking relatives or significant others with a doctor. And so it's just very important for people to have this as a perk. And if law firm allows that, it can be a very attractive thing. Law firms right now have been taking this very seriously, and Canada's taken it very seriously. And so it's just a very, very important issue right now for attorneys to have the ability to work remotely. And some attorneys don't care. Attorneys that do have to work in the office will not like it. They'll say the law firm cares about FaceTime. They'll talk about everyone being in the office all the time. They don't like it. They'll talk about they have to spend too much time commuting, that it's just not something that they want. And this is, I don't need to go into too much detail about this because I think everyone already understands, but if you have independence, don't have to work in the office, people will much more likely to choose firms based on this. Just another quick point, though, that is important. If you're interviewing with firms, will often not want to, if you say you want to work remotely or it's very important to you, they will often not interview you because of that, because they expect you to be in the office. People will often not get hired because the law firm expects them to work remotely. And so that can also create an issue. So you need to be very aware that when you interview with firms, if you're talking about your desire to work remotely and they don't necessarily want you to be working remotely, I've seen a lot of people not get jobs for that reason. For younger attorneys, law firms will often market themselves based on the ability of attorneys to get your early responsibility. And it actually is a very important point for people, such as going to court, running deals, meeting with clients, being the one in the firm primarily responsible for issues, supervising paralegals, taking depositions, writing briefs, doing deal documents, going on pitches, people like that, having primary responsibility for patents, trials. And many times attorneys will leave firms because they don't feel like they're getting enough responsibilities. Not too long ago, I saw one very talented woman who started her career at Sullivan & Cromwell, and at a very early age, she was given the responsibility for running deals by her second year. And for family reasons, she moved to another area of the country. And then when she moved to this other area of the country, partners were the only ones doing the work that she'd been doing at Sullivan & Cromwell, and they weren't giving her as much responsibility. she was angry and left the firm. And attorneys will often choose firms just based on the amount of responsibility they get. And they will be excited that they get this early responsibility, going to trials or running deals. And many times people won't choose firms because they don't feel like they'll get that responsibility. One point I wanted to bring up in terms of about responsibility, though, is if you are not getting a lot of early responsibility, then often that's not the worst thing in the world. You are actually learning how to do the fundamental related work of being in a law firm, of how to learn the basics before you learn the most sophisticated aspects of the work. Not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, if you're able to become an expert in the basic things before you start doing the more significant things, that can often be a positive thing. But people don't like having to do grunt work and the sort of work that early young attorneys could do when they're older. They don't like when they're at firms where everything settles and there's no trials. They may not like doing all this grunt work. They may not like the fact that the law firm isn't doing sophisticated work. And law firms will often market that they have a responsibility if they see an attorney wants that. So they'll say things like, one of our first year just did a trial. This is the only firm where you get to run deals early. I need someone to do everything the client gives us, don't want to be involved. And they'll publicize the early responsibility as much as they can. And so again, responsibility is important. Another way that law firms are hooking you as well. And then law firms will talk about the quality of their offices and building. I'm not going to go too far into this, but their offices can be a lot. I've visited law firms where I've spent an hour touring the building, seeing conference rooms and being impressed by how nice their offices are. And so people will often choose firms based on this, and they'll choose firms based on the size of their office. They'll choose firms based on the furniture and the size of the attorney's offices, the floor of the building, how nice the building is, and brand new offices in the nicest building, views. And then sometimes they'll talk about how they don't like the offices, that they're dated and they're in a bad old building and they'd have to share offices and the furniture is ugly and wouldn't like working there. And law firms are often very proud of their offices. It's their brand, and they'll put pictures of their offices on their websites. And so they can be very good recruiting tools. And then the final one that they will do is they will market themselves based on the size of the firm and the number of offices the firm has. This is something that is very attractive to a lot of attorneys. It's attractive to partners. It's attractive to associates. Law firms believe that if they have a larger firm, more offices, that they're a better law firm. They often try to open offices all over the country and all over the world. And then the number of attorneys in the law firm will often have a lot to do with it. Whether attorneys in their different offices will work together, whether their attorney will have an opportunity to potentially move to an international office. People will talk about this all the time, that they could transfer to another office, that they're more comfortable working in a firm that size because of the number of opportunities. And a lot of times partners will like the offices firms that have offices all over the country, because they'll be able to potentially represent people in other parts of the country. And then if they don't have offices, people will talk about how it's too small and they want to be in a larger firm. The firm's been shrinking. And so law firms will point to the size of the firm like they're in a desirable place to work. And that's just how that works. And so offices are that often very important. So the reason for this presentation today, it is an important presentation, but it's important to you to understand all the variables that other attorneys are using in order to decide where to work. And they use these variables because depending on the firm, they're making determinations based on that. And so you may not be making decisions based on that. But what I would recommend is when you are trying to figure out where to work, that you're able to analyze things for these things. And these are how other attorneys are marketing and deciding. So I will take a short break. When I come back, I'll make a few more concluding remarks about this, and then we will take questions. Thank you. Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up the questions. Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of time today for questions. So like I said, I'm here. So if I ask questions that I'm unable to get to your questions, I will hopefully by, able to answer them next week if I don't get them today. So, okay. Yeah, so I need to leave a little bit early today, but let me take a few questions and then we can get started. But just real quickly, one thing I wanted to give you about these 15 reasons and tell you about is that the reason these are so important is because, and it is a lot to go through them, but the reason these reasons are so important is because if you take your career and you analyze everything through these, you'll understand why you may be making the choices you're making, and understanding these choices about how you're choosing where to work is going to make a major difference in your long-term happiness with where you're working. And sometimes these are very strategic choices. They're strategic choices because if you make the wrong decision about mentors, you make the wrong decision about location, you make the wrong decisions about working virtually, you make the wrong decision about compensation, you make the wrong decision about culture, all of these things, just one of them can have a major negative impact on your career. And if you're not able to make the correct decisions about these things in your career, then your career could be hurt. You could be hurt by the type of firm that you join because of these issues. Let me just start with a few questions here. And I'm not going to take a ton of questions today, but I will take a few here. I'm going to see here. So some firms exaggerate the opportunities for rapid career advancement, but in reality, progression is slow and competitive. How can you accurately gauge the potential for growth in a firm? So that's a really good question. The real way to judge that is what has happened to others in my situation. So in other attorneys, there has to be proof. So there has to be some sort of example, right? Some sort of example of actually people advancing in the firm. So what does that mean? That means that you have to be able to take a look at the firm. And when you look at the firm, you should be able to see if other people have advanced. So they can talk about advancement, but have other people really advanced? And if other people haven't advanced, then that's telling you not everything you need to know. So have other people been able to advance in this firm? And if they haven't been able to advance, then the odds are you won't be able to advance either. So you have to look at examples. There are lots of examples of advancement, and that's everything you need to know. And then there really are opportunities for rapid career advancement. Sometimes people want to, because of other reasons, like they may not advance because the firm they may not advance because there's specific reasons for it. Maybe the practice group has never been able to make people a partner, maybe other things. But the most important thing is generally to look at the example of what has happened to the other people in similar to you. So if they advance other people, then the probably is advanced on potential. I'm planning on to transition from corporate setting to private practice. I find it challenging to assess the reputation of law firms, my new area of practice, unlike the corporate world with the reputation of tied to public visibility, media coverage. Okay. How can I delve deeper into understanding the reputation, where reputation is often tied to public visibility? Or how can I dive deeper into understanding the reputation of law firms within the legal community, especially in niche practice areas? Okay. In terms of niche practice areas, you can often, the best way of doing that, and again, transitioning from corporate setting to private practice is not easy, but what I would say is in terms of assessing the reputation of a firm, the firm in a practice area, that the biggest thing would be the size of the client, the size of the clients, and the sophistication of the work, that the client gives the attorneys. So I hope that makes sense. So what that means essentially is if a law firm is doing very sophisticated work for a client, then it probably has a very good reputation. The better the reputation of the firm, the more likely it's going to be to attract the best attorneys. The better the reputation of the firm, the more likely it is to attract the biggest clients. So there's two things to understand too about the reputation of a firm. So sometimes firms will be doing work for a firm, but it won't be necessarily the most important work. So what does that mean? So sometimes a regional law firm may be representing a big company in smaller matters. whereas a major law firm based in New York or something may be representing law firms in huge matters. So is it what type of firm to join? So the firm in the largest market will often have the best experience, be doing the most important work, as opposed to the firm in the smaller market. These are things you need to understand. The other thing is there's all sorts of public ranks. You can see the number of people in a practice area in a firm. By looking it up, you can see their qualifications in terms of schools and experience. So it's not really that difficult to understand, and people can generally understand it fairly well just by reviewing the websites of firms and similar stuff. Let's see. Okay. Recently graduated from law school and are receiving multiple job offers. Okay. Each with different compensation packages. How can I weigh the monetary aspects against other factors like culture and opportunities, career advancement? In general, money is important, but seems like this is a weird, maybe you graduated in December. Okay. So you can weigh monetary aspects against other factors by how comfortable you feel, which is a big one. Comfortable you feel with the people you feel. And this is actually a good question. The people, how people have been advanced similar to you in the firm. So is there a history of the firm advancing people and making in terms of partnership? How sophisticated is the work that the firm is doing? So that's another one. You can look at other things could be the comfortables is important. Commute times can be one. That's another one. And the responsibility, all these sorts of things are very important. So you need to decide what's important to you. And often the thing about young attorneys is that when you're a young attorney, you often cannot understand these things. Like you have no way of understanding what's important. You have no way of understanding if money's important or if advancement's important. If you want to be practicing law forever, if the level of responsibility you get is important. If there's so many different factors that are important. So you really need to decide what's important to you. This particular webinar should give you some ideas to understand when you're thinking about that. But ultimately, it's important for you to decide what's important to you. I personally think that, some of the most important things are, having mentors or people that will look out for you. I think that's very important because the more people you have that, the better off you're going to be. I think that advancement is very important. And I think but ultimately, I think one of the most important things is how comfortable you feel with the people there. So the more comfortable you are, the better off you're likely to be, because being in a firm is about relationships and it's about all sorts of things like that. And if you feel like you have good relationships and then you're going to be much happier at work, people will have your back and talk positively about you, and that you're going to do much better at a firm in the long run if you choose a firm often based on how comfortable you are and advancement potential. And also the quality of the work and the clients. Let me get started. Keep writing all these things down. Quality of work, and clients. There's also, okay, let's see here. Next week. So this is a lot of information. Even though this particular webinar may not look like it's covered a ton of information, these factors are all law firms are using to sell you are all very important to your future. So you're making decisions based on your future, based on the type of firms that you join. And it's just very important. Okay, how can I ensure the compensation structure of a potential employer is transparent and reliable before making a commitment? Most large law firms, everyone knows the compensation. So that's pretty straightforward, right? So everyone knows compensation. So you don't really need to worry too much about what your compensation is at large law firms, because it's pretty much everyone is aware of it. The bigger issue comes with smaller to mid-sized firms where bonuses and things can be more arbitrary, and bonuses, salary can be more arbitrary. So what does that mean? So at a lot of smaller firms where the salaries and bonuses may not be published, the law firms can pretty much decide what they want to do when they're giving out bonuses and when they're raising salaries. So it's very common, for example, at a lot of smaller and even mid-sized firms to start everyone out at at a high salary that would be the salary that under the Cravath scale, it would be the same salary as that, but then the advancement that people get in terms of raises after a year and 2 years is very slow. Like it goes up much less than it would go up at another at large law firms. So these are things that you need to ask about. And this is a very good question because that you may not always understand that going in. So these are important factors to ask about often. And you can't always depend on bonuses. You can't depend on a lot of things at smaller to mid-sized firms because large law firms have to honor these bonus levels, and they have to do what everyone else is doing. Otherwise, it hurts their brand. But smaller to mid-sized firms do not need to. So if you're going to work in a firm like that, it is important to understand that information. Many times these same firms are operated by individuals as opposed to just a few individuals, as opposed to a lot of individuals. And so in that case, you want to make sure you have a good understanding of that as well and try to get some sort of understanding of what the salary is. And it's interesting that I tell the story a lot, but some small law firms pay far better than large law firms. You just never know. And you can't always tell by their offices. And you ask questions and then you are able to understand in the long run have a better understanding of what those firms are doing. Are there any red flags or warning signs to watch out for during the interview process that might indicate a discrepancy between a firm's claims and reality regarding career growth or company culture? Many firms will say the same thing about their culture, say the same thing about culture. So they'll say inclusive and all these kind of code words. So when you hear that, it's not really telling you anything. And you'll understand what I mean if you've gone out in several interviews, but they'll all say the same thing. And when you start hearing that, that'll show you something. And it'll show you something also because many times the person saying things, you will realize they don't believe it, or it's just funny, but you realize they did not believe it. So meaning their eyes won't meet you. There'll be no enthusiasm and those sorts of things. You can ask questions. You should be able to have a pretty good understanding directly with a firm when you ask them, just when you ask associates, if you're an associate, what it's like working there. If the associate generally seems excited, then you will be, but if sometimes you'll be able to tell if they're just toting a power line. So it's typically what I think is it's the level of enthusiasm that you see when you're talking to people, like how enthusiastic they are, how much do you actually believe them? Where's the connection between what they're saying and what they're doing? And so they may talk about the fact that they're getting all this responsibility. And when they talk about it, you can tell that they're genuinely enthusiastic. And it does definitely look like people get that type of responsibility in the firm. And this is exciting. Sometimes they will talk about it in a way that doesn't seem real, or they won't look excited, or it just won't, you'll be able to tell that way, and you won't really feel a connection. And so you have to listen to your energy and how you feel when you're listening to people. And if you feel like you really believe it, and that's really what I would say. It's more like the connection you get. People can talk about culture, but you may not feel comfortable there at all. So what is the point of talking about culture if you're not picking that up? And you can generally pick up the culture and the people based on what it seems like when you're talking to the firm. Okay, let's see. Are there opportunities for international or cross-border work within the firm, and how can I gauge the firm's capabilities in this regard? Okay, this is a good point. Most firms are not going to necessarily have international cross-border opportunities for you. A lot of firms have international offices and that sort of thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to work there. I think a lot of people join firms thinking that they're going to have an opportunity to work in international offices, but that's just not the case. That if you join a firm with international offices, they prefer in most cases to hire people that are from international, that are in the country that they're going to. Sometimes partners will take people with them, but it actually is pretty rare for people to work in international offices if they join an international law firm based in the U.S. Now, there are cases where law firms will hire people to work in international offices and from even out of law school, but they'll hire lateral attorneys sometimes and give them the opportunity to work internationally, but this is actually fairly rare. And see the next question here. And then this may be the last, maybe I'll take one more after this. This is probably one of the last ones. I do have to take calling, catch a flight. How can I gather insights into a firm's approach to leadership development and succession planning regarding advancement into leadership role? Okay, this question, anyway, firms will have they will have programs where they'll talk about things you need to do to become a partner. But like one of the most important things that a lot of firms will do, some law firms will actually tell you at the interview stage that they're able to, that they will train people how to get business, or they'll show them what they need to do. And if a firm can do that, I think that's actually a very good thing. If a firm has the ability to show you how to go out and get business and how to do those sorts of things, then it's actually very valuable and something that can potentially give you a lot of opportunity in the long run. If you're able to do that, then you may actually be pretty well off if you're able to join a firm like that shows you how to do that. But a lot of firms do not necessarily need, nor do they promote too much leadership advancement and that sort of thing, because when they're hiring associates, for example, they really just need people to do the work. So if a firm says, we'll teach you how to do business, we'll do all these sorts of things right up front, then that can often be a very good sign that the place is a good place to work. Okay, thank you for being on this webinar. Even though this topic can seem somewhat, there's a lot of different points, the most important thing to understand is that these particular reasons that people will join law firms are very important, because you often make decisions based on these, and some of these reasons can be a mistake. Again, very smart being in these webinars. I think this particular topic, you hopefully will avoid roadblocks or make better decisions with your career going forward. And decisions not just based on money, which is often the most common way people make decisions. But thank you again for being here, and I will talk to everyone next week. And there are a few questions that I will get to those as well. Thanks.